Stephen Sene was a standout offensive lineman for Liberty University in the mid-2000s, and while his play on the field was certainly impressive, he impressed more than just his coaches.
He had been there a few months before we actually met, and he was a team captain and tall and handsome, and so, and always like a Christ follower, like you could just see it in his life.
Yeah, I was a youth ministry major, and just going through those classes, it was always in my mind to do something with ministry-wise.
Okay. Awesome!
Yay! Good job!
Stephen and Carrie got married in 2009, and he would spend several years in the Arena Football League before retiring in 2013. It was during this time when God directed them into their ministry calling.
In 2012, we went to Guatemala, and that was kind of our international call.
We were there working with orphans. It was with Hope of Life. When we returned, we both kind of had, this feeling of, okay, now what? We both kind of felt like, okay, there's something that doesn't sit right with us. We did a 21-day Daniel fast and really sought after what God wanted us to do in this time. And it was such a time of clarity that, everything started to make sense. That's where we were like, okay, well, God, you're calling us to international missions. And it was so exciting, but at the same time, it was so scary. We're like, okay, all right, we have a confirmation to international missions, but where were we going?
They didn't have to wait long for God's answer.
We were sitting in Wednesday church, and we're reading through Ephesians, and God just clearly just spoke to me. He just said Columbia. And I wrote it down in my Bible, Columbia. And we got back home from church, and Carrie and I were talking, and I was like, hey, I think I know where we're going. And she was like, oh yeah, where? I told her, well, I believe we're going to Columbia. And she looked at me, and she was like, spell it. Because it's with an O, not a U, and I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and people always confuse it.
Stephen and Carrie would join a youth ministry in Medellin, Colombia, but God quickly changed their plans.
The moment we got there, it was like, man, this is it. Carrie, this is where we're going to be.
So we both love athletics. I played volleyball, and he obviously played football several places. But when we went to Colombia, we weren't intending on doing sports. We were going to work with orphans and homeless children.
I just remember telling her, I was like, yeah, but we can do the sports stuff too.
And I literally was like, I just don't know how sports can reach people for Jesus.
We can do SAQ, speed, agility, quickness, and just be able to use that as a ministry tool.
And I was like, well, we've already committed to 3 years with this other organization, and so we need to wait on the sports. Well, then we get over there, and 4 days into it, the director says, we're gonna go a different direction.
And they dropped us. And they said that you are, released from your three-year commitment. And at that time, we were like, okay, we just sold everything. We packed up everything. We moved here to work with you.
And Stephen was like, okay, cool. Well, I have this sports idea. And we were connected with a sports guy there, and we meet this guy, and he's like, yeah, I never intended, to have a sports ministry, but God just kept putting people in my path. And he's like, we have, almost 4,000 kids in our program, and he's like, they just come. And I was like, okay, God, I hear you, I see this.
People are just drawn to it, regardless if you're here or in any other country. Kids love to play, they love to run, they love to do things, so you throw a ball in it, it's just that much more fun.
It's been really cool just to see how much the kids love sports and how relatable it is, for any walk of life.
It's really nice to be able to go to these fields, have these kids gravitate to just a sport, and then once they're all there and you're done your sessions and everything like that, to be able to present the gospel to them in a way that they understand.
In a year's time, about a year and a half time, we've had 13 people come to know Jesus, and that alone makes it worth it.
But it's awesome, just to be able to use sports and to be able to see how sports has played a huge part of my life and how it's still playing a huge part of my life right now.